Hey, what's up, everybody? Finally back doing a video. It's been like a couple weeks, so really sorry about that. Just been really busy with some real life stuff. Started my own business, been traveling around, and also was just at the World Championships for Warhammer 40k. So just want to make a video and hopefully be a lot more consistent again. I know I said that before, but I really want to put out 2 or 3 videos a week. So I was just at WCW, and it was great. Had some time with the boys and the friends, but I just wanted to go over sort of what the event felt like, kind of what I experienced at a really high level event. And yeah, so let's get right into it. Let's have some fun, and I'm glad to be back. Okay, so as you guys know, this was a GW run event, so that means that there's some weird stuff that's going to happen over the course of it, some weird mission packs, etc., etc. So I played 8 rounds of Warhammer over this last weekend. It's like 32 hours of playing. I initially was not going to go due to some real life stuff going on, like I mentioned at the beginning, but I did lock in Emperor's Children. Mostly because I didn't think I was going to be going, and I was like, okay, Emperor's Children is fun, blah, 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 blah. I did play that over 8 rounds, essentially first timed coterie over the course of this event, so I didn't do amazing, but if I would have played Grey Knights, I probably would have finished, I think, 5-3 or 6-2, just based on the competition and kind of what I saw from the maps and stuff like that. So here is like the top 5 biggest takeaways for me after playing this event, talking with my friends, getting feedback from them. So here we go. Number 1, and I know I made a video a while ago talking about how I like to stop losing going first, but bottom turn is just incredibly powerful. The amount of times my friends came back and, hey, oh yeah, I lost because I had bottom turn, etc., over the course of this event was quite a lot. You know, walking around the venue, listening to people kind of talk about their games. Oh yeah, I went first, so that sucked. You know, it's kind of really shows you the power of that bottom turn, especially in higher level games. I think that maybe locally, or if you're playing against people maybe not at your skill level, going first hasn't mattered as much, but I definitely felt it. I went first 6 out of the 8 rounds that I played, and 2 of those games I lost pretty much exclusively because I went first, because I was on Scorched and Supply Drop. The Scorched one, maybe I could have done a couple things differently, but Supply Drop, I was up by like 27 points, killed almost everything he had. He was able to run something on the middle and get a 15 and score a bunch of secondary whatever and win that way. So impact of bottom turn was significant over the course of this event. So, you know, I don't want to just complain about it, but if you go first, guys, on those sorts of missions, you know, Scorched Earth, Hidden Supplies, Supply Drop, play very aggressively. You know, if you go trade, if the points are equal, or even if you're up by like 10 or 15, you are just going to lose to someone who knows what they're doing when they go bottom 5, because they're going to find a way to navigate and get a max primary score. And that's just how it was over the course of the event. Nothing, you know, I'm not going to complain. That's the game. Got to figure it out. But definitely when you go to these events, really keep that in mind, that you're going to want to have a really powerful top of 1 strategy. Otherwise, you are going to feel yourself losing a lot of games just because your opponent has a huge bottom turn. And for me, not being super experienced with Emperor's Children, certainly felt that over the course of this event. And that is that. Number 2, unless you were talking about exactly Imperial agents, army comfort is significantly more important than how powerful your army is. So, for example, going into this event, I probably had close to 200-300 reps with Grey Knights. Very comfortable. I can tell you almost exactly to the wound what I should do if I activate into certain targets, if I'm going to die here and here, just because a ton of reps. I know how to handle all the different matchups, where to move turn 1 if I go first, where to move turn 1 if I go second. I have all of this kind of mentally mapped out in my head with Grey Knights because I'm super comfortable with that faction. Emperor's Children, very clunky for me over the course of this event. Maybe like not doing my turn 1s efficiently, overestimating or underestimating damage from my units, which is probably the biggest thing that hurt me over the course of this weekend, like what to be scared of, what not to be scared of, because your Emperor's Children is a very high skill army, in my opinion. You don't have a ton of things to activate. You have to be really precise with what you're taking care of, and I just wasn't. You know, I didn't play the army that well. I didn't play the army that much. You know, I did my best. I relied mostly on fundamentals, but you know, when you're looking into going to a big event, if if you see, okay, this army is broken, it's got like a 50, 60% win rate, or I can take my, my orcs or my Grey Knights that I have a ton of reps with, that I feel comfortable with. I think you should go with that 10 times out of 10. And that's probably the biggest takeaway I took from this event. Maybe going into it, I didn't realize how much that does actually matter when you're playing against really good players. But for me, I think that going forward, if I'm going to go play in a big event, if I don't have 50, 60 plus reps with a faction, I'm just not going to consider taking it because I want to do well at these things. So going forward for next year, it's going to be pretty much exclusively Grey Knights. I don't care if they're not great. I prefer being comfortable with what I'm doing on the table and knowing exactly what my plan is going into every game. Some other things that like really goes into it, like you don't get surprised super often when you're playing a faction you've played a lot, right? It's like, okay, cool. If I put Crow's unit into this 10-man power armor unit, I'm like always going to kill it, right? You never have any questions about that stuff. Now, obviously, dice can spike up or down, but like generally, when you're playing a faction that you're really comfortable with, those sorts of things just simply don't happen. So if you guys have a GT or another event coming up that you're not just playing in to practice with maybe a different faction, play what you're comfortable with, get your reps in, practice games with your friends on different army you're trying to learn or on TTS, because it does make a huge difference, and that is for sure, can confirm. 3 is communication and integrity. Now, at this event, obviously we have people coming from all over the world, people who don't speak English as well as others, etc., where your integrity on your rules and your dice rolls, I think, is unbelievably important. And communication, very verbal, very clear and concise communication is going to go a long, long way, especially at a high-level event. I think that good communication and knowing what to communicate with is actually one of the biggest skills that is in this game right now. For example, there was, I think by round 5 or round 6, I moved a Rhino to the really, really tight, little tiny square on layout 1. And I was under the impression that my opponent was only going to be able to shoot it with basically 1 Terran effects. However, he wanted his turn. He moved up his guy, did a pivot, and he was able to catch the craziest little angle shot you're going to see probably that whole event, but he was able to do it, and like honestly that's part of the game. But what I should have did is I should have been, hey look, I want to park this Rhino right here. Besides these units here, is anything going to be able to shoot it? And that's going to start that banter between me and my opponent, to where that will never happen. And I lost that game by like 3, and frankly that Rhino wouldn't have got popped right there. I'd likely win that game. So that's on me. My opponent took the shot that was there. However, I really wish I would have communicated better with him to identify like this. I don't want this to get shot. Can you shoot it with more than these units right here? And we would have solved that very quickly. Another thing that came up with the event, I probably was like 85% on checking my opponent on them getting rules wrong. If somebody shoots you with something and it feels unbelievably strong, and maybe you're not super familiar with the detachment or you haven't seen it before, don't be afraid to like double check and read it. I would say at least 8 or 9 times out of 10 when I did that, I would say, oh, hey, that's only in your command phase. Could you have done it in the command phase to make a difference? And the answer is usually no. Or, oh, hey, you can only use this strat when you're in, hostile assault, which is like a Votan strat, the disembark one. Just little things like that. Don't be afraid to challenge your opponent respectfully, right? Like, hey, look, man, you mind if I read that real quick? And then just read it, and then, okay, no problem, man, that's broken if it works how they said. But, I think you'll find a lot of the time that it doesn't actually work that way. If they're shooting you with 20 shots from 40 inches away, hey, can I read that? Oh, hey, look, that was rapid fire. That's rapid fire 10, so you actually have 10 less shots. That kind of stuff really happens, and don't feel bad about asking your opponent to double check a rule. And then next is like just be respectful and be a good opponent. I made a whole video on this like a long time ago when I was first starting this channel. If you guys haven't watched it, I think it's a really good one. Doesn't have a ton of views like the rest, but I really, really like that video. Be respectful, be a good opponent. Like, let them freaking do takebacks, right? Like, if it's a takeback that's not that significant, don't be a dick. Don't tell them no. Be respectful of your opponent. If something happens that they weren't, prepared for, that they weren't aware of, and they're clearly unhappy about it, hey, look, man, do you want to take that whole play back? It looks like you're pretty surprised. Like, there are things that you shouldn't allow takebacks, like an entire shooting phase, entire turn. Like that did actually get asked to like roll back like a whole turn. Like that's a little bit much, but like, if your opponent runs into something and like they get cooked on the back end because like I forgot to tell them I reroll wounds on an objective or something like that, like honestly, it's better just to be like, hey, sorry about that, man. Do you want to take a step back and kind of go from there? All right, number 4. Shouldn't have to yap too much about this one because I think a lot of people have probably identified this by now, but at GW events with GW terrain, you need shooting in your list. I don't care if you're playing orcs. I don't care if you're playing world eaters. I don't care if you're playing a mono melee army. You have to find a way to put a gun in your list that makes your opponent have to respect playing the game. Now, GW layouts are historically shooting galleries, I think. So if you don't have a reason for your opponent to respect the pulling on the line or a reason for your opponent to stand out in the open, they are going to have a very, very big advantage of you over the course of the game, unless you're just an unbelievably broken and fast, durable melee army, which maybe 60 World Eater Berserkers is an example of this, or something with tons of lone op everywhere. But over the course of the event, I identified very quickly how important my noise marines were and how important any other big guns would have been in these terrains. Like layout 3, we played on 2 rounds. Layout 1 is the most balanced, perfect layout in the game. Layout 8 is a little bit hybrid map as well, where you want to be a combined arms faction and able to threaten your opponent from range and in the fight phase. Something I noticed, correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't see any mono melee armies in top 16. I think the closest one to this was Steve Trimble. He was playing like a trillion witches in Drukhari, but even he had 2 units of scourges with the Dark Lances just to force his opponent to have to respect the shooting lanes. But every other, Admech, Eldar, Deathwatch, all those armies maybe they are specialized in one phase or the other, but they did have a focus or like a way to shoot in the shooting phase that made your opponent respect it, and enough melee to have to get respected. So if you guys are struggling one way or another, I noticed that all of top 16 had multi-phase lists. Thousand Suns was probably the least multi-phase up there, but even they have some melee between Magnus and like Vortex Beast and stuff, right? So really think about that as you're building your lists, and when you're looking at a GW event, just assume that there's going to be more than one shooting gallery layout over the course of the event. So whether you're going to build your list with lone ops or going to build your list with crazy good guns, that is going to be something that's very, very important for the GW events. If you guys didn't know, we played layout 8 for 2 rounds. We played layout 3 for 2 rounds. We played layout, I think, 2 for 2 rounds. And then we played layout 1 for 2 rounds. And those were the 4 days. Honestly, not great. But we did a day with layout 3 sweeping, which was the worst. It's a horrible one. And that brings me to my next slide. And number 5 is going to be short and sweet. Supply drop sucks. It's the worst mission in the game. That round was supply drop, layout 3, sweeping engagement. I think that was round 5. Okay, it was round 5. That is for those who don't know, that's the flat tipping point one. It's like Dawn of War, except tipping point long ways on layout 3. So every single lane is wide open the whole game. It sucks. Supply drop is the most feels bad mission in the game, and I'm going to complain about it. I don't complain about it a lot. I try and stay positive, but this mission sucks. I lost on some bullshit on this one. He just got to go second, walk on the middle, score 15, had a 27-point bottom turn. Jack Harpster lost on this mission. He lost to Richard, obviously, which is a very good player. But again, he just got to walk out of the middle point. Best Gene Steeler player in the world. Tucker lost to this freaking mission. He went set first. His opponent just got to walk things on. This mission is terrible, feels bad. If you're a TO and you're watching this, do not put this dog shit mission into your packet. I hate it. And then bullet point 3, it is evil. It feels bad. And that is the end of it. Now, if you're on it, you go first. You have to just go table them. If you give them the opportunity to have anything left on bottom 5 to go stand in the middle, you're just going to probably lose. And layout 3 sweeping, you have nowhere to stage. You have nowhere to stand except that one little U in your own deployment zone. And guess what can fit there? Like 40 OC of shit, and it gets to walk directly onto the middle and score you a 15. Oh god, this was the most tilting round for sure. If you walked around the venue post this round, you would think Warhammer is the worst game that's ever been made. You got a bunch of people tilted and triggered at how they lost this round. So, you know, number 5 takeaway: supply drop sucks. Okay, and if you're gonna do supply drop, you can't do it on sweeping engagement layout 3. Please. Never again. But yeah, that's number 5. So yeah, a little complaining. I don't like to make too much complaining stuff, but I'm complaining. Mark it down. Complaining done. That is it for the video for today. Hope you guys liked the recap. Again, I'll be back with probably a video on Wednesday or Thursday morning going over a granite list that I'm working on that I think is very cool. And subscribe. We're going to be back being more consistent. And if anyone's interested in kind of coaching stuff or just talking through lists or whatever, do not be afraid to message me on the Discord, which is going to be in the description. And that is it. So it's been a pleasure. Glad to be back, and I will be much more active going forward. So have a great day, and I'll talk to you guys later.